Morning, members. I'd like to welcome everyone to this hybrid meeting of the Statutory Licensing Committee. This meeting is being broadcast live over the internet and will be available to view online now and in the future. May I remind members that is as per statutory guidance made under Section 4 of the Local Government Wales Measure 2011 and our formally adopted hybrid meeting policy, any member attending a meeting remotely must be able to be seen and be heard by the members and officers who are attending the meeting, as well as by members of the public viewing the meeting. So I can ask that you all please use your cameras for the duration of the meeting. We welcome the use of Welsh language at meetings. I've had no request for people to speak Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. Members in the chamber, please be aware that we're all on camera and that you may be visible on screen when people around you are speaking. And please remember to speak clearly into your microphones. Members participating remotely, can you please refrain from using the chat function and instead use the raised hand icon to indicate when you want to speak. And please remember to keep your microphone muted when you are not talking. Before we move on to the agenda, the officers in attendance are Claire H, Claire Ellis, Solicitor, Hayley, Jason Austin and Robin from Licensing as well. So moving on to the agenda, have we got any attendance and apologies?
We have, Chair, apologies from Councillor Charles Davis.
Great, thank you very much. We move on to item 2 then. Have we got any declarations of interest regarding this meeting? Can we note that as well? Thank you. Right, we go on to item 3. It's the minutes of the last meeting. Hopefully all members have read it, and would they like to raise any issues regarding the minutes? Are we all happy with the minutes? That's great, thank you very much for that. Right, if we move next on to the item 4, which is a workload update, that's on page 7, and that's Hayley again.
Thank you, Chair. Before I proceed, can I ask members if they can see the report? Thank you. So the first report for Statutory Licensing Committee relates to workload update for reporting period Q2, July to September 2023. The purpose of the report is to update the committee on the work undertaken by the licensing team during Q2 of the reporting period. The purpose of the report is to update the committee on the work of the licensing team in relation to its functions that fall under the Statutory Licensing Committee, those being the Licensing Act 2003 and the Gambling Act 2005. In respect to complaints, there have been 29 complaints received in relation to licensed premises during Q2 of the reporting period. 17 of the complaints received related to allegations of noise nuisance caused by either loud music or patrons outside the premises. 3 complaints received in respect to premises operating outside of the licensable activities permitted on the premises licence. Visits have been carried out where deemed necessary and on some occasions in conjunction with the internal and external partners, and appropriate advice has been given. Some of the complaints received have been passed to the Council's Environmental Health Team for further investigation. Other complaints received include an allegation of the supply of alcohol to underage persons. The Licensing Authority has written to the premises licence holder advising them of the complaint received. The licence holder has been advised previously in recent correspondence that if it is considered that the provision of licensable activities at the premises is undermining one or more of the licensing objectives, they may be subject to a review. There have been no evidence provided to the Licensing Authority to substantiate these complaints and allegations. The Licensing Authority have received intelligence to suggest that underage individuals have been drinking at a licensed premises. A joint visit was carried out with officers from the Licensing and Trading Standards team, as trading standards officers primarily deal with the underage sales. The licence holder was advised on their responsibilities to ensure compliance with the conditions as specified on the premises licence and offences set out under the Licensing Act 2003. The licence holder has been issued with a final written warning regarding the operation of the licensed premises. In regards to applications, a late temporary event notice was received during the reporting period, and the applicant was seeking to provide licensable activities outside of the permitted premises licence. The notice was served on the public health team and the police as required, and representation was received from the police and a counter notice was issued, which meant the temporary event could not go ahead. In July 2023, the Licensing Authority received an application to vary a premises licence. The application was for a full variation due to substantial changes to the layout of the premises, which cannot be determined through a minor variation process. One representation was received from the Licensing Authority, and the proposed condition was accepted by the applicant, and the licence was subsequently granted. In August 2023, the Licensing Authority received an application to The application was for full variation as the applicant was seeking to include the use of the outdoor bar area and extend the function room, therefore increasing the capacity for drinking on the premises, which cannot be determined through a minor variation process. 2 representations was received, one representation from the police and the other from the Licensing Authority, in the interest of promoting the prevention of crime and disorder and prevention of public nuisance objectives. The representation sought the inclusion of the conditions in the licence, and those were sent to the applicant and agreed. Therefore, representation from both the police and licensing authority were withdrawn from the application process, and the licence was granted. In September 2023, a licensing hearing was held to determine an application for a new premises licence to be granted in respect to an off-licence. The panel considered the representations received, which included objections from interested parties. The panel heard representations from the Licensing Authority and also an officer from the Trading Standards team, who highlighted concerns regarding the prevention of crime and disorder and the protection of children from harm. The application for a new premises licence was refused, and to date an appeal has not been made against the decision. In September 2023, the licensing panel was called upon to make a decision to consider whether to suspend or revoke a personal licence following a conviction of a relevant offence under Schedule 4 of the Licensing Act 2003. The licence holder did not attend the hearing. However, the panel was satisfied that the licence holder had been provided with sufficient notice of the hearing and no request was received to adjourn the hearing. The panel decided to proceed in the absence of the licence holder, and the panel decided to revoke the personal licence. The licence holder has been notified of the decision, and to date an appeal against the decision has not been made. In respect to the Gambling Act 2005, there have been no complaints made in relation to the gambling premises during the reporting period. The workload activities undertaken during the reporting period are included in the activity report, which is attached as Appendix A to this report. The number of service requests dealt by the team in relation to providing business advice is high, and this is evidence in the activity report. And where complaints or intelligence have been received in relation to breaches of legislation or policy, this has been followed up by officers by the team and action taken as appropriate. And there have been no complaints made against the service during the reporting period for matters falling to Statutory Licensing Committee for determination. It is therefore recommended that Licensing Committee note and comment on the content of this report and note the activity report for July to September 2023 Q2 reporting period. Thank you, Chair. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Hayley, for that. Has any members got any comments or questions they would like to put to Hayley? No. The only question I would ask is, the licensed premises, are there being more monitoring of the actual premises? Do you having more visits to make sure that, you know, they're conforming?
Thank you, Chair. Where we have complaints, obviously we become more aware of potential problems in the area. We don't just go out and visit and then leave it. You know, there's regular communication then with the licence holder going forward to ensure that those complaints don't resurrect themselves.
Thanks for that. I'm aware of that. Definitely no comments or questions before we move to the recommendations? No? The recommendations, as Aidan's already said, but I'll say it again, note and comment on the contents of this report and note the activity report for July 2023 to September 23. Are members in agreement with the recommendations? Are we all, yeah? Yeah. So unanimous. Well, thank you for your report, Hayley. Thank you for that. If we now move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is introduction of the mandatory licensing scheme of special procedures in Wales. And that's Austin, that's yours. Welcome to the licensing panel.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. So the purpose of this report is to advise members of the anticipated introduction in 2024 of a mandatory licensing scheme for special procedures in Wales, which will fall within the remit of the Licensing Committee and the wider Public Protection Service. The Public Health Wales Act 2017 Part 4 on special procedures will impact on approximately 50 businesses and 80 practitioners undertaking special procedures activities in Torfaen, with the implementation of a national mandatory licensing scheme. Special procedures will initially include the current registration for the activities found in the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1982, Part 8, on acupuncture, tattooing, skin piercing and electrolysis. The aim of the legislation is to make those procedures safer for citizens who seek special procedure services, providing protection from possible harms to health, ensuring there is clear direction and support, and also protection for practitioners providing such services, creating a robust licensing regime for Wales that will allow for consistency in enforcement. The employment of safe working practices and good infection prevention and control measures to ensure that both clients and practitioners are adequately protected at all times is essential. The current legislative controls, i.e. the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act, which offers a non-mandatory registration scheme, has proved to be ineffective in ensuring a consistent approach by all practitioners in Wales to operate safe working practices or infection, prevention and control procedures. Poor hygiene practices result in blood-borne viral infection, bacterial skin infections, and some of which result in sepsis and allergic reactions, which is often the outcome of insufficient consultation before a procedure is performed. There will be greater powers to enforce this legislation than those currently in place, as well as the ability to revoke a licence and immediately stop unsafe practices. Those persons who perform special procedures not in the course of business, i.e. not for payment, may be designated by a local authority as requiring a licence. So we hope that this will deter unscrupulous practitioners and scratchers who are often found to be untrained, unregistered artists tattooing out of their home, as an example. The threat to public health around the shortcomings of the current system was evidenced in a serious outbreak of Pseudomonas in a Newport tattoo and body piercing establishment in 2014. That outbreak affected a considerable number of young people between the ages of 13 and 16 and saw some of them admitted to hospital with severe post-piercing infections requiring surgery and in some cases reconstruction. The investigation of that outbreak, testing 841 clients who had visited the studio, cost the NHS more than £240,000. The outbreak highlighted the vulnerability of young people to these practices and the impact of infections known to be resistant to antibiotics. Torfaen Council has also successfully prosecuted 2 scratches in the past, and we welcome the additional legislation. A transitional period will be in place to allow special procedure practitioners and their premises to be assessed by officers of the Public Protection Service and moved across to the new licensing scheme. The Council will be responsible for enforcing the licensing requirements and for keeping an up-to-date public register. There will be no grandfather rights and there will be a requirement to hold both a premises and a personal licence. These licences will run for 3 years before requiring renewal and temporary 7-day licences will also be available to accommodate events. Every practitioner will be required to demonstrate their competency by obtaining a recognised qualification, during which their knowledge of infectious disease controls will be assessed. The implementation of new legislation will have an impact upon resources and will require additional training of relevant members of the Public Protection Service, and most of us are sat here today. Fees will be set on an all-Wales basis and will be funded on a cost recovery basis. So the recommendations of this report is the Licensing Committee note and comment on the contents of this report, and secondly, that we consider whether a briefing session should be arranged for the Licensing Committee and members to include a presentation from Welsh Government. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you for your first report in front of the licensing. Any questions for Austin?
Jason.
Sorry?
No, it's Jason.
Oh, Jason Austin, sorry. I got the wrong way round. He could have been Steve Austin, but they were. Yeah, the only question I would have is some of these people do them from their own homes. And after the transitional period, if the complaint comes in, how quick would you sort of move to stop that happening?
Well, I'll probably go across to my colleague Liz, who's on the call, who's our lead for health and safety, so tends to deal with the investigation side. So I'll go across to Liz.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I think there will be a transitional period from when the legislation comes in to start. However, working from home is something that is going to be looked at. We will be ensuring that all premises are registered and licensed. So we will be looking into all those that are currently registered with us. If they are working from home without being registered, then obviously they are working illegally already. And we do pick up on those through complaints as well. So it's something that we are continuing to look at. But once the legislation comes in, everybody will need to register with us and become licensed.
Yeah, thank you for that. Councillor Haynes, you want to ask a question?
Thank you, Chair. Just that I welcome this legislation because it seems to be tying up those little loopholes that exist. And I guess anyone that's working from home that's not licensed could potentially also be breaching some sort of planning rules or planning laws. So there's a whole sort of raft of things that tie into this. But no, I support this. It's really good. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That's and thank you for the response because you do get asked. Sorry, Councillor Lynn, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just a little bit of clarification on what this covers, really. Does this also cover cosmetic procedures that involve injections?
Shall I come in there, Chair?
Yeah, I was going to say did you want to answer that?
Thank you, Liz.
At the moment, the legislation will only cover the acupuncture, tattooing, skin piercing, etc. that is covered. But there are plans afoot that once this legislation is in place, then we will continue with, or Welsh Government will continue and look into such things as Botox, dermaplaning, all of the beauty areas that seem to be establishing, and new ones seem to be around the corner all the time. So it is something that is being looked at in line as well, similar to in England.
Right, thank you for that clarification.
Thank you for that. Is there any more anybody would like to ask before we move on to the recommendation? No? And the recommendation is that the Licensing Committee note and comment on the contents of this report and that a separate briefing session is arranged for the Licensing Committee to include a presentation from Welsh Government. Are we all happy with that recommendation? Yeah? That's great. Thank you very much. I'm sorry about having your name wrong the wrong way round, but thank you, Jason, for that. We move on to the final item. Is date of the next meeting is scheduled to take place on the 22nd of February 2024. So, thank you, members who attended the meeting. It's been a very good meeting and a lot in these reports, I will say that. So thank you to all the officers as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Cheerio, everyone.